All right, guys, welcome to the second section of this How to Make course. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Instead of just diving into the actual recreation of the track, I do want to touch on kind of the why I do things, not just the how. So the first thing I do anytime I start a track, and I didn't come up with this idea, I cannot take credit for this, a lot of producers will do this, is I will find a guide track or a track or song that's commercially released that I like, or that I like an element of, maybe a few elements, or that it just inspires me. So especially with EDM, electronic dance music, there are so many genres. A lot of DJs and producers, we don't just stick to one genre. We kind of dabble around. Maybe one week it'll be progressive, and then a few weeks later we'll be looking at trap. And what this does is it helps you have a reference point of quality. And it keeps you always looking and checking and kind of thinking ahead in the mix and in the arrangement process. So I'm going to pull up Spotify real quick, and the song that I use as reference was namely just in the drop. I liked a couple things that they did with the production, and I liked the mix. And so I thought, why not? I'll use this as a reference point for my song. And it's called Bittersweet. It's by, I'm going to butcher their name, and I apologize. It's Diro, and Conroe. And the drop part sounds like this. All right, so I like that arrangement first and foremost, and I also like just the vibe and that kick I'm digging. And also, I don't know if you heard, play it one more time, there's these little spaced out glitches. Left and right that I really liked. So I wanted to incorporate, I don't want to copy, but I just want to use this as a guide to be like, okay, I really like these three elements. I'm not going to rip off the sound and the whole, I'm not going to try to recreate that track, but I want to create something that has these elements that I like. And I usually pick three elements from any of my guide tracks that I'm using for a reference point when I start this process out when I'm creating a new track. And what that does is it pushes me to try new things, and it gets me out of the process of, oh, I know this synth preset works, or I know this effects chain will do this. It makes me play a little bit more because some of those things I've never personally done. So it's a nice starting point. And then also, this helps me to kind of it pushes me in the mix process to think ahead to, okay, what's this going to sound like mastered? Because that's one of the hardest parts, especially when you're starting out or an intermediate producer. It's going to be hard for you to know when you choose a sound or a sample, how it's going to sound as a finished mastered product, unless you've done it a bunch and you've failed a bunch and you've basically learned by trial and error a few times, and you'll start to realize, oh, I can or I can't do this. This helps you avoid that whole mess from the get-go. All right, so let's jump into it. So I'm using Logic X as my DAW, and I have the tempo already set to 128. With a genre like progressive, I'm not going to start with the drums because it's going to be 4 on the floor. It's going to be kicks and a little bit of snares and claps. So I want to start with something that inspires me. I want to start with something chordic or melodic. And I do start with the drop. I know a lot of producers will start with sometimes the intro and then work their way in, or some of them will even start with the breakdown. I like to start with the drop. It's because I come from a hip hop and pop world, and you start with usually the main section of the song in those genres. So that's how I've kind of tailored my workflow process even in the EDM world. All right, so I want to talk about this master channel strip that I have going on right here. I have 3 different plugins that are actually affecting the sound, and then a 4th that I use to visually check my mix. And I start out with this on not as kind of a cheating mechanism, but as a fail-safe and as a safety precaution. So I have a compressor, I have the sausage fattener, and I have FabFilter's limiter. So this compressor is made by Slate Digital. It is a bus compressor. It is meant to go on your master bus. I have the mix at 34%, so it's not doing a whole lot. It's just imparting a little bit of character, which I like. Now, the sausage fattener I will set to 13%. I am a superstitious individual. 13 is one of my lucky numbers, and so I start all my tracks with the sausage fattener with the fatness at 13%. Call me crazy, but it works. So what this is doing, the sausage fattener is adding a good amount of volume to it right now. If I turn this off, my voice is going to be a little bit more quiet. So this will boost things in the mix, which is helpful because now I have a guide track, I have a reference track, and that's a mastered, commercially released song. And it can be really just heartbreaking and disheartening when you're starting a song and it doesn't sound nearly as loud as a master track, and it's not supposed to. But you can never get close sonically if you're not kind of doing a little bit of something on the master bus or the chain. Now again, all this is real light. It's not going to really do a whole lot. I have the color down at 0. I don't want to color the sound. Just want to boost a little bit of the volume. The sausage fattener is a harmonic exciter, compressor, and limiter kind of all bundled into one simple interface. It's made by Tailored Noise, and I'm blanking on the two guys that do it, the real names, but it's Data Life, and they're great EDM producers, so it's kind of a cool plugin. Now, next we have the Fab Filter Limiter. I have this set to just +2 gain, and the reason why I actually use this is to not really push the volume. If I turn this off, the volume of my voice is not a whole lot quieter. I use this so I can reference sounds quite loudly on my monitors without the fear of kind of killing my ears. Sometimes you can load up a sample or a synth preset, and it can just be way louder than what you were working with previously, and it can kill your ear. It can really hurt. So I use this kind of as a safety precaution. All right, so let's actually jump into the process of creating this track. So instead of, again, just laying it out in front of you and showing you everything I do, I want to talk a little bit about the thought process. So I wanted to do something that was anthemic or something that was uplifting but not cheesy and too happy sounding. So I didn't want it to be sad. So I knew I didn't want to start on too of a minor oriented chord. So I'm going to be working in the key of D major. So my scale for that is D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and we have D. So that means the chords are going to be D major, because a 1 is always major in a major key. The second's going to be E minor. Second note is going to be a minor chord in a major scale. The third one's going to be minor as well. It's going to be F sharp minor. Then we get to G major. Then we get to A major. And then we're going to get to B minor, the 6th, which is an important chord in a major key. And then we get to this weird one. It's going to be diminished. It's the C sharp. It's going to be diminished. So we're not even going to really go there. It's going to be C sharp diminished. Not going to use that in this production. And then we get back up to D. All right. So that's the scale. That's what I'm going to be working with. The reason why I wanted to do that is I like working in this key. I'm comfortable in it. I know the scale fairly well. I can kind of improv and solo and write melodies, and then I can always change it if I needed to for a singer or a vocalist that maybe could or maybe couldn't hit that sweet spot of the key. But yeah, so I don't want to start on D because that's kind of too predictable to me. So my thought process was, let's start on G. It's the 4th of the key. So it's that G major. And again, I didn't want something too happy. I didn't want it too sad. So let's say I started on B minor, to G, to D. I don't like that feeling. It's a very common progression. Didn't feel right. So I wanted to change it up. So I like starting on this G. I like going up to the B minor. Even though I'm going from happy to sad sounding, it just has this feeling. It's a little bit more uplifting. And then down to the A major. And then I really liked using this E minor as my 4th chord. It's kind of a cool twist. You could do the D major if you wanted more happy. But I really like that E minor. It had a cool vibe to it. So those are the chords that I will be messing around with. And it definitely took me a few minutes to come up with that. I started out on the B minor. And I didn't really like that feel, so I just kind of played around with it until I got something I had liked. And now for the actual melody writing part. This is just, again, if you're playing on keys, pick something that you're comfortable with key-wise. you can kind of improv and solo. So I started out with the scale, basically. So you can hear on the top notes, I'm literally just going up the scale. But with the chords, it kind of gets a melody. Again, not again, but that's not a very cool melody, but it's something to mess around with just starting in the scale. Now I'm taking notes out. And again, just trying to search for something and find something that is cool. Sometimes this takes no time at all, and other times it takes a few hours. So, all right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play around and find that melody and start to lay it out on the keys. The first thing I'm going to do with this song is I play keys, but I'm not amazing at it. So what I actually did was I offset the rhythmic value of the chords. So if I play this with a click, each chord wasn't getting 4 counts. Some of them were coming in on more of an interesting pickup. So let me record that in real quick. All right, so what you can see here is instead of getting 4 counts, I'm kind of coming in right here on the 1 and 2, and it's kind of this little pickup right here. It makes it have the bounce, and I think it's going to make it, well, it did. It turned out to make it more kind of anthemic sounding as opposed to just having everything go 4 counts. So 1, 2, 3. And so that's going to play with what I do melodically nicely because it's not on, this kind of 4-bar grid. There's something going on a little bit different. Now what I can do is I'm going to just duplicate this track, and then I will be able to play the lead separate from that main track. So what I did was I just kind of played around with that, so I got something that was the actual proper melody. So let me play that in real quick. All right, so there are the chords and the actual lead. It's really that simple. That's how I'll start out a lot of my tracks. I'll just start with something simple. And the reason why I do that is if it sounds cool on piano, it's going to sound really cool with synths and actual proper production. So let's listen to 8 bars of this. All right, so I do want to point out something real quick with the melody and the rhythm here. You'll see that these chords, I talked about this before, it's not every 4. I'm going to change these to the chords, the power chords that I did on the piano, to just be every 4 bars, and we'll see the difference in the feeling. So that sounds like what I would use in a breakdown, and that's actually what I did in the breakdown. The chords didn't have this little pickup. Now it's cool with these this little pickup here. The last note of the little riff happens at the same time as the start of the new chord. I thought that was a cool kind of play off of, the melody restarting, or the chords restarting, and the melody just ending. So So that note right there is the end of the first bar of the melody, and that coincides with the second chord of the progression. And that happens twice. Doesn't happen on every chord, but it does happen. So this last little part right here, that's simply just a pickup. If I just kept repeating these first 3 lines, the melody would be really boring. So what I did, I want to talk about just real quick, because I know a lot of you guys watching this are probably hoping to get some tips and tricks on writing catchier or better melodies. And some of the coolest advice that I think I can give is, even if you don't have much music theory background, this will still be helpful. Melody is nothing but motif, a repeating motif or theme with some interesting nuances thrown in. So my repeating theme here is this. Right? That's the theme. Right there. So, okay, that's the motif. Now I need to find ways to vary that motif. So you can see here, you can see that this theme stays very similar for the second bar, but it's a little bit different. I just go up to this high D right there, whereas on the last note of the first one, I went to an A3. That's enough to make it interesting. And then on this third bar, that motif that happened, that theme, the first one in the first bar just repeats, and then the fourth bar is brand new and is this kind of pick up into the repeating section of the melody. So we really only have these 2 instances where this is creating we have this motif or theme that's kind of catchy on its own right. Like if I just looped this first bar, it's kind of a catchy, fun melody. But if I just did that the whole way through 4 times, it would get boring. There's a fine line between catchy and repetitive. Catchy is something that's good and catchy to start with, and you repeat that theme or motif a few times, but you got to add some interesting nuances. Now, in the production process, I know I can add more of the interesting elements to this melody. What I can do is I could have these pickup notes right here. What I did, which was the thought process when I wrote the piano, I was thinking, okay, I don't want this to be the main synth sound that we hear as the main drop. I'm going to make this a brand new sound. So then we have this little high section, this high note right there that breaks up the theme or motif nicely. And then we have maybe every 4 bars, maybe every time, maybe every 8 even, we have this little end pickup section be a brand new sound or a combination of other sounds. That's going to create and add some nice, interesting feeling to the progression, not just keep it, so repetitive that it gets boring. So now we have the actual drop melody written. We're going to start to fill out the other sections of the drop, maybe with some synths or some pads or just some other presets just to get the idea moving.